This episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast is brought to you by Liberté Ministries. Freedom. The word alone elicits strong feelings of pride and comfort. That's because it's more than a word. Freedom is something that everyone longs to have in many areas of life. At Liberté Ministries, it's at the focal point of all they do. The word liberté means freedom, and so they strive to help those in Haiti find freedom in education, in economic self-sufficiency, and most importantly, freedom in Christ. Liberté works with 23 congregations of the Lord's people in Haiti and operates 2 schools that have a combined attendance of 600 students. They also have the Haiti School of Biblical Studies, a 4-year college that not only provides crucial training for preachers, but also for teachers and other church leaders. In addition, there is Harry's Home, a children's home that sees to the physical, emotional, and spiritual needs of many children. Go to TravisLovesHaiti.com for more information on how you can help spread the good news of Jesus in Haiti.
Welcome into the Helping Healing Humor podcast with Ben and Travis. Dad Pod 2022. I'm Travis Creasy. That's Ben Hayes.
What's up? Hope you're doing well, Travis.
I am, and Will the Thrill is on vacation, and so we've tried our best to leave him alone this week going into Father's Day. When this airs, Father's Day will already have been passed, and we hope that you've had the best Father's Day ever. And so we're going to spend a little time talking about Father's Day and what it's like to be a dad, as we both are a part of that fraternity, and talk a little bit about some of the things that maybe keep us focused and things and maybe goals that we have being dads. And but we got a ton of stuff going on. Like, I don't think that I did my due diligence in understanding that we're going to be promoting a book, releasing a book, Reframing Hope, while we did our 30-day challenge, which we're midway through, I think today, or was that yesterday, plus getting ready for a Freedom 5K, the 3rd annual Freedom 5K, which when this airs, you got 2 days to register to make sure you get your t-shirt and your finisher medal. It's going to be super blingy this year, like blindingly blingy. So you need to make that order by the 23rd to make sure you get both of those. Dodgeball coming up in August. Ben, what am I leaving out? I'm sure there's something.
I don't know. I mean, we've got stuff going on. I don't know if it's anything else for other people, but some meetings and some speaking engagements here and there and everywhere, it feels like, coming up in July. We got Maywood coming up. So yeah, we would love us to jump on board with any of those. I had somebody tell me the other day they were trying to put together a team for dodgeball. So I'm excited to hear that.
Excellent. Well, we are rocking and rolling. I've got a few speaking engagements. I was at Decatur Church of Christ last night. It's great being with those folks. Camp Maywood is coming up soon. But yeah, we wanted to talk a little bit about being dads. We did a Mama Tried podcast for Mother's Day, and I think that that's accurate for all the women in our lives have tried to raise us better, but maybe we denied some of their pleading, but I think they did okay. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about dads, and we just want to encourage those of you that may be listening that are not dads to encourage those dads in your life. Maybe send them this episode and tell them, hey, this is what I see in your life. But those dads who do listen, we want to encourage you and let you know how much we appreciate your involvement in your kiddos' lives and being there for those in your life supportively. So
I was looking at some things yesterday and getting ready for Sunday. Of course, you know, the whole preacher thing of having something ready for Father's Day. And there's kind of the joke that goes around, right, where on Mother's Day, we lavish the mothers with praise and with gifts and with all these different things. And on Father's Day, we're like, all right, dads, you need to straighten up and do this thing better, you know? And so it kind of feels like sometimes the dads get preached at, the mothers get like elevated. So we want to do a little bit of elevating of dads today, not preaching at dads particularly. I'm going to try to elevate dads on Sunday. But there's certainly, I guess with anything, as you start talking about, here's some great aspects of fatherhood, you're still challenged by that, right? So, you know, you get challenged by the fact that, okay, that fits and I can be praised in that area, but maybe I need to work on that area too.
Challenged, but not overwhelmed. Challenged, but not overwhelmed. We talk about leadership when we think of dads. Not that that's not a quality that women have as well. And that brings us to our podcast sponsor, Lads to Leaders. And so that's a great program that leads and it helps folks learn how to lead. And so it's definitely a part of what we want to talk about today as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a couple of things that were pointed out to me here recently. I was looking through a book, and I was seeing that in Genesis chapter 21, or chapter 1 rather, verses 26 through 28, that there's a statement there that we're pretty familiar with, but if we really break it down, we see some things that men are supposed to be. If we want to be like the Father, these are some of the characteristics that we carry, or that we should want to strive for. In my life, my dad fit these characteristics. I know some dads don't, but maybe, like we said, a challenge to the ones who don't, but an encouragement to the ones who do. And so, I'll read Genesis 1:26 to 28 just so that you kind of get an idea of what we're talking about. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let him rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over the cattle, and over the earth, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." God created man in his own image, and in the image of God he created them, male and female, and God blessed them. And God said, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Subdue it and rule over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the sky and over every living thing that moves on the earth." So, very early on, he kind of gives us a description of what this man that he was creating was going to be like. What do you think about that, Travis?
I think the Bible is the most practical book that's ever been written. And so definitely we see a pattern that God gave us early on to be in his image. Through him, I have this ability when I'm doing the right things that my kids see him. But even when I mess up, if I'm able to go to my kids and say, "Hey, that wasn't the way I wanted to be," or "I said this," or "I did this," that even in that, God is glorified. And even in that, we're elevated. When a dad or a mom or anybody in authority over me has the capacity to say, "That's not how I wanted that to go," or "That's not how that should have been done," I gain respect for them and elevate them, as you were saying, the ability to admit when you're wrong and to say that I could have done that better.
When I look at the passage, I see this idea of we are made in his image. And I think a lot of people have debated that through the years. What does that mean? Does that mean we look like God? Does that mean we act like God? Does that mean we, whatever the case? I don't, God's a spirit. He's not physical. So I don't think it's necessarily that we're made in the physical image. But somebody made the point that that verse itself just sort of points to, if we really want to be men who are following God, we need to be men who know God. Like, we really need to get to know him. We need to have a relationship with him. We can know facts about him, but not be connected to him. And I think that bleeds over even into the relationships with our kids. We start with knowing God, and that, we want to pass that along to our kids. But, our kids may know who we are, but do they know us? Yeah. Are they connected with us? Yeah. Are they, do we spend the time with them? And that's the key with knowing God, is spending time with him, watching what he does, seeing what he does. And I think we're certainly given that example too, as fathers, of being present in the lives of our kids.
Yeah, early on, the word "know" has a little more intimacy to it. There, early on in Genesis, to know someone had an intimate relationship, and so that image is maybe the stamp of God on our personality, on our feelings and our emotions, and the capacity to have compassion, to even humor, even to help heal and humor. are things that God gave us. And so absolutely to know him is an absolute must if we want to be the best that we can be for not only our kids, but those around us as well. And so when we defer, we have that humility to defer to God being God. And that really lightens the load. You know, I have freedom to kind of be me. I kind of put it this way. Whitney's already in love with the perfect man, that being Jesus. And so in some ways, I'm still chasing perfection. I hope to land on excellence. But in some ways, that helps my mental capacity that I'm just supposed to do what I'm supposed to do, what I'm capable of, and control the controllables, to quote Lonnie Jones. Yeah.
Well, and go back to the fact that if you look through all of the Old Testament, the people who were considered these great examples, they were really just men like us. But the ones that really set the example were the ones who knew God. You know, you've got Abraham, who very much communed with God and spoke to him. Was Abraham perfect? Not at all. In no way. Moses, not perfect. David, not perfect. Even Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, we don't see as much of their problems as we do with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But each one of those guys had problems. Each one of those guys were struggling in some area. And then this idea of Jacob wrestling with God was such a cool picture in the Old Testament of, there's so many times where we feel like we wrestle with God. We don't understand, but he wants us to do that. I was talking to somebody yesterday that having some doubts and having some concerns about their faith. And I said, Jacob wrestled with God. And I think what God wants us to do as his men, and by the way, a lot of women listen to this, it's the same for you. He wants you to wrestle with him in those thoughts. Don't ignore the thoughts. Don't walk away from the questions, but come to him with the questions. How many people in the Bible questioned him? So if you're struggling with your faith right now and you're listening to this, don't walk away from it. God is big enough to handle your questions, and you'll find them, I think, if you wrestle with him.
Really is that spiritual muscle. Whatever your weight, you can't start off with the heavy weight. You got to keep pumping that bench press, and then eventually you work yourself to the heavier matters and working through those. You don't quit. You stay at it. And part of that, and I love how you mentioned Eli's sons did not know God, 1 Samuel 2:12, which means, yes, his sons are responsible for their relationship with God, but there had to be something missing there. Even though Eli may have been busy doing the things of ministry, that does not always equate to showing, and I think that leads into your next point, that of men who lead. And then you get to mentoring later, but those men who lead, and leading is not always being out in the front. And in fact, Jesus comes out and puts it to the last, that you are last. You're not getting any namesake. A lot of times we think of leaders as generals and presidents, and those are leaders. Those are positions of leadership. I think the ones we respect the most are the ones who try not to take the glory, who don't poke their chest out, and people almost have to force them into the spotlight. The ministers out there, the leaders, the bosses, the parents that are out there getting their hands dirty in the trenches of ministry is how I heard it put last night. That it's easy to get up for CYC and get up in front of thousands of people and goof off and have fun. But are you doing the things day in, day out that people don't see?
Yeah.
But do lead to results.
There's this idea in that passage we read in Genesis 1 of dominion. And that makes it sound like we're kings over the world and we're over everything. And he does say you're to have rule over the birds and of course that's probably not a hugely politically correct conversation to have these days, that we have dominion over the animals to do with what we choose. I'm a hunter. I believe in hunting and eating the animals that I hunt. I don't disrespect them. I try not to be disrespectful of what God has made, but to use those things. But he says, we have this, we have dominion. And the point for us is, I'm never going to have dominion. I'm never going to be the leader of the known world. I'm never going to be someone who's, over some country or over the world in any way.
So but there you have it. He just declared there will be no Hayes Creasy ticket in 2020.
There will be none. So, because even if there was, I'm pretty sure we wouldn't get elected. So there's that. But, we have dominion over our little corner of the world, whether it is, in some ways our households. We have some leadership capabilities there, and you can go with that as far as you think on those things. But even the standpoint of I'm in an office that I'm using right now. It's really kind of an apartment, but it's my responsibility to take care of this place. If I were to damage it or mess it up, my dad always, this is one of those things that I learned from my dad, was leave a place better than you found it. So that's where I can exercise that leadership and that dominion. If I go to camp somewhere, you and I went to the beach last week. I noticed signs along the beach that said, leave only your footprints. I think the Appalachian Trail has that kind of mantra is, don't leave any sign except your steps that you were here. And I think that's another way we show our dominion, whether it's in our workplace, if it's teaching our kids to pick up your room, pick up your toy box, do some of the things that, that take care of what God has given to you. So I guess the idea of stewardship, we're stewards over a certain thing.
I think even dominion over your tongue, which I'm still working on, dominion over your emotions and how you act out those emotions. Do your best to never talk down people who have a role in your kids' lives. Mm-hmm. I can't tell you how many times as a coach and as a minister, like, you can have all kinds of problems with me. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. I make the wrong call in sports. I make the wrong call in ministry. I'm not a perfect human being. But please, 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 don't run my name down to your kids. Like, if you've got an issue, don't get in the car after Sunday sermon on your ride home and talk about how terrible the preacher is or how this ministry is not going how you want it to go, because it does impact them. And so, that's something I'm trying to do. I can't tell you how many times I've lost my anger at my kids and had to go back along and go, guys, that's just not how that's supposed to be. I lost control. I said something I regret. I apologize. Which, again, God can redeem that situation. But dominion starts with where your feet are, to kind of go back to only leaving your steps. Yeah. And how am I going to impact the people I come in contact with today for good? And how are they going to see Jesus in me? And that's really a flexible thing. They can see him in our best moments, and they can see him in our worst if we're able to confess those things. But absolutely, and that rolls right into that next point you had of loving your wife, treating your wife well.
Genesis 1 reminds us there, right at the beginning, he created them, man in his image, God created him, male and female, he created them. So even though it doesn't necessarily here talk about marriage, it's going to in the next couple of chapters and all throughout the scripture. He didn't just create us. He created us to take care of. God's purpose, God's meaning for our lives was to get married, to have children. I mean, that was, now, is that capable? Is everybody capable of that? No. But one of the very first chores he gives us in life, one of the very first things is to do this, and he created husbands and wives to be helpers for one another. And so with that in mind, we think about, how do we love and how do we take care of? And the Bible, like everything else, has ample instruction for how we love one another. I saw someone post 1 Corinthians chapter 13 and the verses there about love is patient, love is kind, and all those things. And I've done this many times in sermons, and I saw somebody post it the other day, so it's kind of fresh on my mind of, can you put your name in those words? And where love is, can you put your name? So when it says love is patient, love is kind, love is not jealous, love doesn't keep account of wrongs suffered, can you put your name? Travis is patient, Travis is kind, Travis doesn't keep account of wrong suffered. And when we start really looking at, and by the way, 1 Corinthians 13 isn't about marriage. It's about love in general. But when we show love to our spouses, to our kids, to the people we go to church with, to the people we work with, can we put our names in there? Can we say, hey, this is how I try to treat people, patiently, kindly? It's important for us to kind of think about the way that we treat one another.
It's chasing that perfect love, and we'll be excellent at some of those things, and something that'll keep us busy for the rest of our lives, right? we can podcast about that forever and not lose that content there. But absolutely, people learn how to treat one another. Those people that you have influence over, and none greater than those kids that live in your home, or the kids that you impact at work or at camp, is that influence of leaving things better. God gave me this situation, this circumstance. I want to leave it better than when he gave it to me. What's your legacy? Are people looking forward to being rid of you? We can't wait till that guy leaves the room. Or is it one of those situations where, man, we just can't get enough of that Ben Hayes guy? We'd like for him to stick around.
The way that we love, especially love our wives, if we kind of come back to that thought, that love morphs over time and changes. The way that you loved and the way that you spent time together when you were first married, their relationship looks different right now than what mine and Kenya's and what yours and Whitney's looks like, because now there's kids involved. And so it's not that our love for each other has changed, but the way that it's expressed, the way that it's brought about, the way that, we deal with it and do things are different now. And then now watching my mom dealing with my dad, who's having some health issues, and the kind of care that she's having to give to him is different than what our wives are having to do for us right now. And so understanding going into marriage that's why we have those vows, for better or worse, till death do us part, sickness and health, all those different things, is I've made a commitment that even when things are not great, I'm committed to helping and encouraging and bringing, these people before the Lord as often as possible.
And that brings us right into your point of mentorship, that the men who mentor, that's a part of the image of God. And so, man, I just go back to that idea that even if maybe you're sitting there and you're in a situation where you're divorced and it's Father's Day or whatever, and I go back to the thing about talking about people, that's that person's dad or that mom. Mm-hmm. I mean, I see people go online and they may read that one day. When we wrote our book, we were very careful not to tell our kids' story, because they get to write that. It's our relationship to them. There's still a story that they have to tell, and maybe one day they will. Who knows? But their parents, their biological parents, and we had thoughts about them. Like, we've got to be careful that we don't write their story, or make them look bad or whatever, because we don't know everything they've gone through. And so, as this day approaches, if I can give some parental for somebody coming from a situation of a split home, that's that person's dad, that's that person's mom. And eventually they'll get to the point where they can make their own call on who's to blame for what and who's to blame for that. And so I just want to encourage folks out there that, as far be it as on you, be at peace with every person.
That's right.
There's going to be a time to air grievances. And social media is just not the place for that. And I'm the chief of sinners. The mentorship of when to do certain things and when not to. Great advice. I've already shared some from Jackknife, Ronald Hayes, on leave things better than you found them.
The reason that kind of got brought up is, and you go, where's that at in Genesis chapter 1? It's where he talks about be fruitful and multiply. The very purpose that God gave us as a family is for that. Now, some people joke and say, I took that a little too far. I've got 5 kids. So, but just saying, he that was a part of it. And obviously, as we've talked about before, there's people who, for whatever reason, either choose not to have children, or they, that choice is kind of made for them and they struggle with that. There's people who, like you guys, have adopted and brought kids. But regardless, most of the people I know who don't have children they still fulfill this quality of mentorship. They have been fruitful in some way. They've helped out my family. We went to the beach last week with aunts and uncles who never had children, but we became theirs on some level, and they have blessed us. They have helped us to have that peace of mind at different times. And so, we have those relationships. I know friends who never had kids who have mentored so many other children and teenagers and been something that maybe either in a struggling parental relationship they couldn't be, their parents couldn't be. And so they kind of stepped into that role, or just as a resource for the parents. Hey, here's a guy that is, that wants to love these kids. And so I'm going to send, my kids there to talk to him when they don't want to talk to me. And so there's a lot of ways that can play out. As a world, we're to be fruitful and multiply, but part of being fruitful is not just the idea of having kids, but giving those kids kind of direction in life.
But that really is the whole point, is that they would grow up and carry on the godly teachings and life so that they give it to their kids and their kids. It really is a legacy. And to your point, every one of us is building a legacy.
That's right.
Every one of us is influencing someone for the good or the bad. There really is no neutral ground. And I think that's the fallacy. That's the lie that Satan, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You just do you. And there is a level of being comfortable in your own skin and realizing that you're going to fall short. But we all have this ability to put our best foot forward, if we keep going with the foot theme here, to do the best that we can, to give the best influence and mentor and be a legacy change.
My dad had 7 sisters. Among one was your mother, had 3 brothers. And so there was 11 of them. I've got 5 kids. So this verse has always been something brought up to me. And it's always one I've thought about a lot, where it talks about children are a gift of the Lord, a fruit of the womb is his reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. So that was brought up to me a lot from my grandparents, and my dad would talk about how our grandmother loved that verse. And something that has been pointed out to me in the last several years about that verse is, what do you use arrows for? I mean, you launch them. And the purpose of parenthood is, a lot of people go, well, I don't want my little boy to grow up, and I don't want my little girl to grow up, and I want to hold them tight, and I always want. Well, part of our purpose as a parent is to help launch our kids. We're trying, and I don't know if that was the meaning behind Psalm 127, but it's certainly a part of it, is there to be, we're launching our children like an archer launches his arrows for them to impact the world, and part of fatherhood and part of motherhood and part of just being parents is preparing our kids to be sent out. That there's a point where it says you leave your father and mother, and then you multiply. That mentorship that we've given them allows them to then connect and have a healthy relationship with somebody else. And I've said for a long time, the best gift that you can give to your kids is a good relationship with your wife or with your husband. Now, sometimes those don't end well. Sometimes people get divorced, as you've mentioned. But even then, me having a civilness with my ex-wife, having that civilness is important too, because that teaches them about relationships, about conflict resolution.
Because believe it or not, there are going to be people in this world that you don't get along with.
That's right.
And even people that you do, but on a certain situation or circumstance or issue, you don't see eye to eye. And I think we can all say that civil discourse could be a lot better right now.
And they're learning from you in that. So part of that mentor process is teaching them how to get along with people, teaching them how to talk to people, but launching them into the world to make an impact. And, above all those things, what we hope as Christians is that they make an impact on the world in showing the world Jesus. Study that, look at that, think about from God's perspective. But I think the things that we've talked about, even if you're somebody that's struggling with a relationship with God, those ideas are still so important.
Bedrock values that are found in the Word of God, but can be done in anywhere by anyone.
Yep. Connecting, leading, loving, and mentoring. I mean, they're all important.
Transform is a word that describes what women do. We transform from sisters to best friends, from girlfriends to wives, from wives to mothers, mothers to grandmothers. Women are constantly evolving into a new role, a beautiful, challenging role. Much like our titles, our spiritual lives transform as well. While always a student of the Word, some are called to be teachers, mentors, servants, and disciples. Transform Ladies Conference aims to bless every phase of your Christian walk. Come join us October 14th through 16 in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee for a delightful weekend full of truth, God's love, Christian fellowship, and fun. www.tlcladies.org. Contact JJ Davenport. info@tlcladies.org.
The Lads to Leaders question of the day. What are some gifts, just easy, simple, maybe 3 or 4 gifts that you can give men in your life every day? And we say that the way to a man's heart is through his stomach, right? So good food, just straight through the stomach, right to the old ticker.
I would definitely agree with that. We all like to eat, and it's always nice to get those. I would go a little deeper on mine with my first one at least, and that is respect. I think every man just wants to be respected. And if you look at his needs, her needs, it's one of the top needs that they list in that book of a man is. And so from kids' perspective, from, wife perspective, and I'm not meaning like, again, we have full dominion over everything. I don't mean it that way. Just respect our point of view, respect the things that we like, the things that we want to do. It's okay to challenge and to say, well, that's taking a little too much time. To appreciate the things I do and to respect the things I do. I think most men are looking for that on some level. Tell them thank you. The other thing I would add is one of the other things in his needs, her needs, if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I've read that, but the recreational companionship, just having somebody to do stuff with, like go watch a movie with me, go, play putt-putt, go play golf, or at least go watch me, go sit in the golf cart with me, go play basketball. That's probably one of the greatest things about Kenya and I when we were in college and even first married is Kenya will get out on the sports field and show me up. So yeah, it's almost like I go, you can stay home today because I don't want to get beaten, but she's so good at sports and still is to this day, better than I am or ever hope to be. But that was a cool thing for us was we had that. We could go throw football or throw a baseball, a softball, shoot basketball, and those kinds of things are important to connect with.
To your point about recreational, even sitting on the couch watching a television show together, or we won't really go there, but the level of intimacy as well. That's a great gift that you can give to your spouse. Yeah, exactly.
Go check out Trey and Lee for more information on that. But,
yes, they get into the detail. But those are all great gifts that you can give your husband, and even some of those, the aspect of being with your dad. I've always thought that would be a great thing. My dad's love of basketball and football, those all were given to me by him. I can remember coming home on Wednesday night after church, and there'd be the SEC basketball game. I can remember watching the basketball game on Saturday, football games on Saturday, and kind of sitting around. And so those are all gifts that you can give the guy in your life at some level all the time. Don't wait till Father's Day. In fact, I
Yeah.
would encourage you to do it anytime the opportunity arises. But
So I know Father's Day will be past when we get this, but if you haven't already, at least tell if your father is the figure, or maybe there's multiple figures. I'm gonna probably say something to my dad on Father's Day. I know I will to my father-in-law on Father's Day. I try every year to text some of my family members that have been very close to me. We mentioned earlier, just kind of like, hey, happy Father's Day. You've been a father figure to me. And I've got some friends that almost every year I text who didn't have kids, but have been an influence on me and been an influence on others. And I usually send them something and go, hey, thinking of you today and appreciate you today. So if you haven't done that already, from Sunday to now, then why don't you pick up the phone and, text or call somebody and tell them how much you appreciate them.
Thanks for being with us for this episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast. Be sure to download our free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living, at benandtravis.com and receive all of our Helping Healing and Humor extra content directly in your inbox. We look forward to having you join us at the same Ben and Travis time, same Ben and Travis channel.